Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. I hope the week's gone well. We just whiz by in some mad whirl, I find. Sometimes I have to turn around and say, what day is it? Macro thoughts. This tweet got my attention. Last known VCR factory in Japan will stop making the machines. I remember the VCR coming and Dad buying one and watching those videos there. It's quite sad, really. Holger asks if there's a bubble in the making, stock valuations at highest in a year after markets gained $5 trillion in 3 weeks on stimulus bets. Home thoughts, let me start with Herodotus and the histories. Such was the number of the barbarians that when they shot forth their arrows, the sun would be darkened by their multitude. Dionysius, not at all frightened at these words, but making light of the median numbers, answered, "Our Trachinian friend brings us excellent tidings. If the Maydays darken the sun, we shall have our fight in the shade." I like this tweet. Sunrise behind me, moonset in front, Brian Stelter. Rubit Shah took a photograph of Mombasa, which of course is my hometown, from the sky. Rather good photograph it was too. I did an interview when I visited the Mara Fairmont with Munene Ngotho, who's the general manager, who's been there since the days of Tiny Roland. Gives us a bit of background into the campsite, the camp, safari camp, story of the Maasai chief Ole Tutu, who had 12 wives and about 62 children. And apparently, according to Moshe, each of those children receive something from the payments that Fairmont has to make. We visited Queen Elizabeth, who was a rhino, and a white rhino. Kofi Annan, who was a black rhino, was not to be seen. But have a look at Queen Elizabeth, pretty big creature, aren't they? Amazing. I'll put up a photograph. How long should you wait to get your child a smartphone? As long as you can. Mutua Matheka took a photograph of Dubai, which I liked, on June the 27th. Every surfer dreams to find the perfect wave, steeply sloped and powerful, breaking gradually along its length as it barrels toward the shore. The quest has lured everyone from beach bums to CEOs, united by a spirit of adventure. If you're up for that thrill, there are some of the best surfing spots on the planet where you can try to find and conquer that perfect wave. That's an article in Bloomberg. Take a look, it's pretty good. And then I like this photograph from AFP correspondent going for the gold again. The magic of AFP photo at the Olympics. Political reflections. Let me start with this tweet from somebody called Tom Nichols. I am Judge Dredd, referencing Donald Trump's speech. I am your voice, Trump said. I said, the Messiah, I am your voice, does not come forward in the good times, but comes in dystopian times. And that took me to The Second Coming by W.B. Yeats, turning and turning in the whitening gyre. The falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The centre cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming. The poem continues, and I just thought that Donald Trump's I am the voice plays on that idea of a terrible dystopian world out there. Donald is going to be the savior. Look, it's highly effective politics. Let's get serious now. And I appreciate it for that fact, first of all. I don't think, throwing brickbats at him on the facts is going to work. I think this is a highly emotional argument. It takes me back to that quote I like from 1997 about information warfare. If you want to find it, just type it in the website rich.co.uk. It'll pop up, as I've used it so often. I find it very powerful. Bloomberg Politics says Trump paints a dark portrait of damaged nation only he can save. Exactly. Gamble that Americans share his vision of a nation teetering on oblivion, casting himself as a renegade outsider who is the last best hope to stand up to a discredited and depleted establishment. I am your voice, he told a cheering convention hall. His campaign manager says people are hearing the message. I think you will see next week the polls will show that the convention was successful. I'm sure it will. I think he's doing rather well. Donald Trump's doom and gloom. I am your voice. Dark imagery, almost an angry tone. Our convention occurs at a moment of crisis for our nation. Law and order, he said 4 times, each time drawing out the syllables. Forgotten men and women of our country. People who work hard but no longer have a voice. I am your voice, and that's the lesson for Brexit. Let's be honest. To every parent who dreams for their child and every child who dreams for their future, I say these words to you tonight. I'm with you, I will fight for you, and I will win for you, he said. I concluded by saying we've entered a new era of populism, and President Trump, frankly, is a real possibility. And apparently the song that was played as they were leaving was You Can't Always Get What You Want. Very interesting transcript of an interview that Trump gave in the New York Times, talking about how he probably would have doubts about coming to the rescue of some NATO partners with massive wealth. We're talking about countries that are doing very well. Then yes, I would be absolutely prepared to tell those countries, congratulations, you will be defending yourself. How is it helping us? How has it helped us? With massive trade deficits. I could see that if instead of having a trade deficit worldwide of 800 billion, we had a trade positive of 100 billion, 200, 800. How's it helped us? Well, keeping the peace, talking about the military, the forward position of the military. We didn't have a presence in places like Korea in 1950, or not as great a presence, and you saw what happened. There's no guarantee we'll have peace in Korea. Even with our troops, no, there's no guarantee. We have 28,000 soldiers on the line, sure, but doesn't that mean there should be something going on right now? Maybe you would have had a unified Korea. Who knows what would have happened? In the meantime, what have we done? So we've kept peace, but in the meantime, we've let North Korea get stronger and stronger, and more nuclear and more nuclear. And you are really saying, well, how is that a good thing? You understand, North Korea now is almost like a boiler. You say we've had peace, but that part of Korea, North Korea, is getting more and more crazy, more and more nuclear. They're testing missiles all the time. In a deal, you always have to be prepared to walk. Hillary Clinton has said, we will never ever walk. That's a wonderful phrase, but unfortunately, if I were on Saudi Arabia's side, Germany, Japan, South Korea, and others, I would say, oh, they're never leaving, so what do we have to pay them for? Does that make sense to you, David? Then he jumped to Erdogan. The coup never took place. The coup was not successful, and based on the fact, and I give great credit to him for being able to turn that around. Erdogan? Yes, some people say it was staged. You know that? We've heard. I don't think so. But I do give him great credit for turning it around. I think right now when it comes to civil liberties, our country has a lot of problems, and I think it's very hard for us to get involved in other countries when we don't know what we're doing and we can't see straight in our own country. We have other problems. I think we have to focus on those problems. When the world looks at how bad the US is and then we go and talk about civil liberties, I don't think we're a very good messenger. So that's just, you would not, as say President Bush did, the last President Bush, make the spread of democracy and liberty the core of your foreign policy. You would say, we need allies. We're not going to lecture them about what they do inside their borders. We need allies. And lecture inside their borders? I don't know that we have a right to lecture, but to look about what's happening with our country. We're not in a position to be more aggressive. We have to fix our own mess. I'm a fan of the Kurds, you understand. Asked about NAFTA, saying that without doubt he would remove it. Talking about Putin, you said you respected his strength. He's been complimentary to me. I think Putin and I will get along very well. I was just in the Baltic states. They're very concerned, obviously, about this new Russian activism. They're seeing submarines off their coast. They're seeing airplanes they haven't seen since the Cold War. Bombers doing test runs. If Russia came over the border into Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, places that Americans don't think about all that often, would you come to their immediate military aid? I don't want to tell you what I do because I don't want Putin to know what I do. I'd have a serious chance of becoming president. I'm not like Obama, but every time they send some troops into Iraq or any place else, he has a news conference to announce it. They are NATO members. We are treaty obligated. We have many NATO members that aren't paying their bills. That's true, but we are treaty obligated under NATO. Forget the bills part. You can't forget the bills. They have an obligation to make payments. Many NATO nations are not making payments. They're not making what they're supposed to make. That's a big thing. You can't say, forget that. Then he's talking about cyber. It's absolutely a thing of the future, the present. Look, we're under cyber attack. Forget about them, and we don't even know where it's coming from. And he says, yes, I am a fan of the future, and cyber is the future. Asked about Assad. I don't want to say that. I have a very specific view on Assad. I think we have to get rid of ISIS before we get rid of Assad. Assad hates ISIS. ISIS hates Assad. They are fighting each other. We're supposed to go and fight them both. How do you fight them both when they're fighting each other? So pretty interesting interview, well worth looking in full. And my conclusions are, interestingly, that Erdogan has pivoted towards Vladimir Torkov, the fact that he might have even received an early warning from Russia about the coup. You've now got Trump pivoting towards Putin as well. It's very interesting, and that tells me Putin's back in the driving seat, and as I wrote that time, a geopolitical grandmaster as he moves the chips in his favour. Europe, not to forget about that. Francois Hollande tells Britain to leave the EU as soon as possible. Uncertainty is the greatest danger, he said. Emad E. Mostak, a follow-up to it, says, what happens to a country when the population growth exceeds nominal GDP growth and profits are monopolized by elites? Zimbabwe, Venezuela, many other cases. I like this, the world's movement of people in one map. This was from WEF. And then this tweet from Ali Cologne regarding Erdogan and Ataturk. The photograph says it all. IS trying to topple the Saudi king with attack on Muhammad's mosque. That's what I've been talking about for a while. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar 110.21, dollar index 96.89, Japanese yen back above 106. Interesting developments yesterday when the transcript of an interview conducted a month ago with Kuroda, when he was pushing back on helicopter money, was released. The yen surged, but back up above 106. Pound 132.42. The Aussie 0.7467. India rupee 67.165, South Korean won 1134.48, the Rial 327.16, Egyptian pound 887.90. The Rand, which has been very firm, testing upside resistance. Last time I looked, 14.1921. Dollar index, I'll put up a 3-month chart. My target's 100. Euro dollar, I think it could drop like a stone at any moment. Gold, that's trying to snap back a little here this morning. Where are we now? 13.23. Earlier on, it was 13.26. Crude oil, I think the end is nigh again. I'll put up a 1-year chart and see what I mean. Very interesting piece in Fortune magazine about Glencore digging itself out of the abyss. The commodities behemoth faced a crisis last year as prices of metals, grains, petroleum products, as well as the company's stock price plummeted. And this article takes a rare inside look at how the secret of Swiss giant survived and how it plans to thrive again in a post-boom world. I'll just read you a little bit. Shimmering below our 8-seater plane in the dazzling African light is a mammoth hole gouged out of the terrain of the DRC. From the air, the green and black hues offer just a hint of the huge mineral wealth lying under one of the poorest, most remote countries on earth. Yet it is only after we have landed on a tiny airstrip and bumped along in an off-road vehicle for half an hour past mud brick houses that the full extent of those riches become clear. From the rim of the pit, the rock 450 feet down at the bottom looks as if it's been drawn from neon Crayolas, its green popping against the deep black earth. Some of the richest ore bodies anywhere are in Congo, and one of them is here, as the manager of mine. In my country, it's 1% copper. In Chile, it is 0.5% copper. I've never seen anything like this in my career. Here, parts of the ore, he says, can be up to 30% copper. Marc, of course, was the founder of Glencore, an industry pioneer who fled the US from Switzerland in 1983 after being indicted for tax evasion and racketeering, and then was subsequently pardoned by Bill Clinton. In 2001, famous quote of Marc, if you're too proud, you don't do business. Emerging Markets Raw Data, Stephen Jennings, New Zealand Initiative dinner lecture, The Market Path to Prosperity. I like this quote. I once saw a graduation address advising massive students to take big bites in life and chew hard. That was a great quote. Foreigners sometimes talk about having a ringside in emerging markets. My experience is more akin to full participation in the protracted ruck of early stage development, and try to think of the days when rucking was an integral part of the game. Jennings says many find Africa's complexity disorientating. It's bullish. US maps at 1 MDB fraud trail from Kuala Lumpur to Hollywood. You couldn't make this stuff up. They even managed to finance the Wolf of Wall Street with these funds. Diverted cash was used to purchase a breathtaking catalogue of loot that prosecutors moved on Wednesday to seize. There's a stake in the Viceroy L'Ermitage Beverly Hills Hotel, as well as homes, condos, penthouses from Los Angeles and Beverly Hills. A $35 million Bombardier jet as well. Moving on to Turkey, $9 billion bond route signaled by swaps after botched coup. S&P downgrades Turkey one notch to double B from BB+, outlook negative. Turkish lira sinks to record low 3.09 per dollar after S&P downgrade yesterday. Look at this chart from 1990 of the dollar versus the Turkish lira. Mongolian bonds, anyone, London negative yield, exiles find shelter in emerging market fringe. Have a look at what's been outperforming since Brexit. You can see that people anticipated additional liquidity and therefore bought up riskier assets. Let's move on to Africa. Breaking: Zimbabwe's leaders, loyalists, make surprise break with Mugabe, calling him dictatorial. I said the economy's in a death spiral. The loyalists are bailing. This is therefore a moment of maximum danger for President Mugabe, not one he's seen before. And a very effective fellow, this flag, I was listening to him on the BBC, came across as an extremely sharp, intelligent man, and a formidable adversary, I would have thought. Saying Thursday's announcement by the war veterans delegitimizes Mugabe in a big way, not least because he's always quick to flaunt his war credentials and revels in his title as patron of the War Veterans Association. South African oil share up 4.5% this year. Dollar rand, as I said, right up against resistance. It should break down imminently. Egyptian EGX30 up 6.15% in 2016. A new floating exchange rate was fixed, but that may be changing. That's the Economist talking about the Naira. I think President Buhari missed it big time. He should have devalued on day one, let it overshoot, and then basically used his political capital at that point in time. This is a big problem in Africa, that policy-making errors can continue ad infinitum. The Naira fell to an all-time low on Thursday, crossing the 300 to the dollar mark for the first time. Looks as if they're going to try and let it land at an equilibrium rate, because otherwise no money is going to come in at all. The Naira fell 5.4% against the greenback, 309. Nigerian oil shares down 2.25% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index down 10.8% this year. Saudi Arabia looks certain to join the growing band of nations with military bases in Djibouti, Africa Confidential can reveal. There is a major traffic jam there, isn't there? All kinds of China is there, the US is there, France, I think Japan. Now you've got Saudi Arabia. African banks, subprime savannah. The Economist, very interesting article, well worth reading in full. Africa's financial firms can claim many innovations from M-Pesa to the life insurance for people with HIV offered by All Life. To these can be added the first social media bank run, Chase Bank Kenya, the country's 11th largest, unrelated to America's JP Morgan Chase, was taken over by regulators in April. The run highlighted the risks facing banks in a region that is seen by many investors as one of the industry's final frontiers. Whereas banks in many rich countries have produced disappointing profits since the financial crisis of 2008, African ones had until recently been reporting stellar growth and juicy returns. Those in Ghana were expanding their loan books at a breathtaking pace of more than 30% a year. Banks in Mozambique, Zambia, and Malawi were not too far behind, and most were making good money too. Moody's reckons that average return on equity ranged from 20 to 25% in many African countries, making their banks well over twice as profitable as American ones and 4 or 5 times more profitable than Europe's lenders. Yet in many parts of sub-Saharan Africa, these mouth-watering profits are turning into losses as a result of falling commodity prices, slowing economies, and in some cases weak regulation. Shares of Nigerian banks are sinking. Central bank insists there is no need for panic withdrawals from any bank, saying today's sticky issue in Nigeria is oil. During the financial crisis, the price of oil slumped only briefly before recovering strongly. Nigerian banks subsequently lent billions to local businessmen to help them buy oil and gas wells. These loans, about 25% of the country's total, seemed quite safe until the oil price began dropping in mid-2014. It is now less than half of what it was then. First Bank, Nigeria's second largest by assets, says that 18% of its loans are non-performing. A lot of people are saying it's not 2009. Well, it's worse, says Ronald Gadio of Exotics. Back then they didn't have the exposure to oil. In Ghana, non-performing loans have jumped to more than 10% of the total. Zimbabwean banks hold lots of government bonds that will probably never be repaid. They've only staved off runs by limited withdrawals. In Kenya, however, banks face a different set of stresses. Weak regulations exacerbated by the proliferation of small banks is taking a toll. 3 banks have been placed into receivership in less than a year by Dr. Patrick Njoroge, the respected governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, as a series of ruinous insider lending scams have come to light. Njoroge alleges that the MD of one bank siphoned off $335 million via 20 shell companies over 13 years. The full scale of the heist was discovered a few days after his funeral. At Chase Bank, the victim of the social media run, directors had signed off on some 8 billion shillings in loans to themselves. Mr. Njoroge seems determined to clean up Kenya's banking system, but elsewhere in Africa, regulators will seem willing to turn a blind eye to problems. Forcing banks to admit to rising bad debts could lead to painful collapses, and to strain public finances if governments have to step in with bailouts. Allowing zombie banks to limp on, too weakened by bad loans to make any new ones, would only worsen Africa's desperate shortage of credit. Have a look at the Mindspeak presentation by the central bank governor. Have a look at this another link I put up, the new normal, when it's describing where it's trying to take the banking sector. Very articulate, knows where it's going. I called him the real deal, which he is, and I think it's outstanding for Kenya that we've got real serious leadership at this moment in time, at that point, at the Apex Bank. I wrote a piece on the 18th of April 2016, Chase Bank, of the story of the three wise monkeys, Mizaru, Kikazaru, and Iwazaru. 11th of April, I also said the core banking system is sound, which it is. So do take a look at that. Let me put up a chart of 1 year Treasury bill rates, a comparison between South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya. You'll see the huge spike up that we had when interest rates were raised last year in October, I think. I called that the trade of the year, which it was. Kenya Airways records country's worst ever loss since the FT. Reported a net loss of $258 million, up from it's a little bit less the previous year. Results were hit by a series of one-off items, including charges linked to a pure fuel hedging policy. Airlines operating loss narrowed from 16.3 billion to 4.1 billion. Eric Musa of Standard Investment Bank says, from an operating perspective, I think they're really improving. They're headed in the right direction, and I don't think they have anything major to clear, he said. Bouvi, who's the CEO, said we're still growing, even in difficult times, we're still operating, and confidently so, even with results that are losses. I said I gave Bouvi the benefit of the doubt, which I do, but I did say he's in the last chance saloon, and he has to turn the numbers around this year simply because the accumulated losses in the last 2 years are now huge. I said a recovery in Kenya's tourism industry after 4 years of declining visitor numbers should also help the airline. And then I wrote a piece in the Star. I said KQ has little room for missteps. So that it rallied 11.6% over the 2 sessions preceding the release of the full year earnings yesterday morning. Second set of earnings delivered by Bouvi, 5.4% improvement in revenue, direct costs down 10.8%. And I've advocated forcefully that they should remove all their fuel hedges because the airline's job is to run an airline and not to trade oil, which they've done poorly. Finance costs surged by 48.9%. Current liabilities stood at 73.5 billion shillings, 2.5 times the company's current assets of 29.7 billion. Current ratio weakened to 0.4 times from 0.5 times recorded in the full year 2015. Gunzi is speaking of a return to profitability in 12 to 18 months. It is imperative and absolutely in the national interest that he succeeds. Peering through the headline optics, you will note that KQ took a 9.7 billion shilling FX hit. Speaks to the outsized currency volatility we've seen across sub-Saharan Africa. International airlines, for example, have stopped flying to Nigeria and Angola, among other destinations, exactly because of their inability to get paid and forex devaluations they've incurred. These airlines have exercised a stop loss, and it has been costly. I think KQ has an outstanding opportunity to capture market share as these international operators retreat, but that will require a super sophisticated treasury function. Other costs increased eightfold to 10.8 billion shillings. Most of that was FX. Clearly, downshifting capacity from 43 planes to 36 was also expensive because KQ was a seller in an oversupplied market. It is clear to me a number of Middle Eastern operators are on the prowl and would see KQ as a neat fit. Qatar is probably the lead, as it tends to be in most of these big-ticket SSA situations. It's a highly levered play, very little room for any missteps. Clearly a strong tourism-related correlation that has bounced off its lows, which should support. So these results have a little of something for everyone. Pessimists will see a glass half empty. Optimists might argue there's a glimmer of a recovery. The next 12 months, in my view, are crucial. If you want to look at the full year earnings, that link is on Rich Wrap-Ups and on the front page of rich.co.ke. I have a comparison of Kenya's share price since 2008 compared to the Nairobi All Share. It's been a story of shareholder destruction, I'm afraid. If Boovi can pull this off, it will be a very big deal. Nairobi All Share up 0.14% yesterday, but still down 4.72% year to date. NSE 20 plumbed a fresh 21-month low. It's down 13.01% this year. Have a look at this. The Kenya Eurobond yield post-Brexit. We were talking about Mongolian bonds, but also we saw that spillover effect as people sought yield come into Kenya. And then have a look at its spread since it was first sold versus US Treasuries. That spread is what a lot of people look at. It really hasn't narrowed, so it's some of the strength that we've seen has come from the US Treasury market. I wish you a tremendous weekend, and thank you for stopping by.